There is a reasonable chance that somewhere in your kitchen right now, tucked behind the pasta or sitting in the vegetable rack, is one of the most clinically studied natural medicines on the planet. Not in a specialist health food shop, not behind a pharmacy counter, already in your home, already paid for as part of the weekly shop. For generations, people across Britain relied on plants to manage everyday illness. Your grandmother probably knew which herb settled an upset stomach. Your great-grandmother would have had a preparation ready at the first sign of a winter cold. Somewhere between the post-war years and the modern age of prescriptions and high-street pharmacies, a great deal of that knowledge quietly slipped away. But the plants did not disappear, and neither did the science behind them. Over the past several decades, our researchers have been testing these same herbs and roots in proper clinical trials, randomized, controlled, peer-reviewed, and what they are finding again and again is that plants people had dismissed as old wives' remedies are producing measurable, significant, and sometimes genuinely surprising results. Today we are going through 10 of them. Not rare plants you have never heard of, not exotic imports you need to order from somewhere obscure. 10 plants that are growing in British gardens, sitting in kitchen spice racks, and lining the shelves of every supermarket in the country right now. Some of what you are about to hear will stop you in your tracks. One of these plants has been shown in clinical trials to match paracetamol for a specific type of pain. Another has been compared directly to pharmaceutical anti-anxiety medication and held its own. And the one we are saving for last, the plant most people would least expect, has accumulated one of the most extraordinary bodies of clinical evidence of any natural compound on Earth. Stay with me. We are starting at number 10 and working our way to the one that has earned the most remarkable evidence of all. Number 10, aloe vera. The plant that has been quietly sitting on your windowsill for years, doing far more than you knew. Walk through most British homes and you will find one. That thick, spiky, rather architectural plant in the terracotta pot by the kitchen window or on the conservatory shelf. People keep it because it looks striking and because almost nothing can kill it, which appeals to anyone who has ever been too busy to water things properly. But very few people treat it as what it actually is. One of the most well-documented medicinal plants in recorded history. The medicinal use of aloe vera stretches back thousands of years. It appears in ancient Egyptian papyri. Greek and Arab physicians wrote about it. It was used for wound care, burns, and digestive complaints across dozens of entirely separate cultures that had no connection to one another. Modern clinical research has examined it carefully. A systematic review published in the journal Burns looked at the available evidence and found that aloe vera gel produced faster healing of first and second degree burns compared to conventional treatments, including petroleum-based dressings. Not marginally faster, measurably faster in controlled conditions. For minor burns from the oven or a kettle, which are a daily reality in most British kitchens, the clear gel from a broken leaf is one of the most clinically supported first responses available. There is also solid research on its use for soothing the gut, with studies showing benefit in conditions like irritable bowel syndrome when aloe vera juice is taken internally. Most people walk past that pot on the windowsill without a second thought. The plant that looks purely decorative is anything but. Number 9, rosemary, the kitchen herb that neuroscientists are now watching with great interest. Rosemary sits in the spice rack between the oregano and the thyme. It goes into the Sunday roast. It flavors focaccia. Nobody thinks of it as medicine. But researchers studying cognitive function and brain health have been paying close attention to it. Rosemary has been associated with memory and mental clarity since ancient times. Greek scholars are said to have worn garlands of it while studying. That connection was long dismissed as charming symbolism. It turns out it was closer to observation. Researchers at Northumbria University carried out studies examining what happens when people work in a room diffused with rosemary essential oil. Volunteers in the rosemary-scented environment performed measurably better on tests of memory recall and mental speed compared to those in an unscented control room. The differences were statistically significant. The mechanism appears to involve a compound called 1,8-cineol present in rosemary oil, which research suggests can cross the blood-brain barrier and influence the activity of an enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, one of the key chemical messengers involved in memory and learning. That is a specific, identifiable pharmacological mechanism, not a mood effect, not wishful thinking. Beyond cognition, rosemary contains a compound called rosmarinic acid, which has documented antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties and has been studied for its protective effects on cells. That humble jar in the spice rack may be doing considerably more than improving the flavor of your roast potatoes. Number 8. Lavender. The purple field that is doing something very specific to your nervous system. Most people in Britain associate lavender with drawer sachets, country gift shops, and those photographs of rolling purple fields in Provence that appear in every summer travel magazine. It carries an association with gentle, slightly old-fashioned comfort, which is why most people are genuinely surprised to learn that a lavender oil preparation has been approved as a licensed medicine for anxiety in several European countries. A standardized oral preparation of lavender essential oil, marketed under the name Silexan, has been put through multiple randomized controlled trials for generalized anxiety disorder. The results were substantial enough that it was licensed as a medicinal product in Germany. The trials showed meaningful reductions in anxiety symptoms, and in some studies, the results were comparable to pharmaceutical anti-anxiety medications, but without the dependency concerns that accompany long-term use of those drugs. Lavender's effect when inhaled has also been examined. Studies have measured reductions in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, in response to lavender aroma. This is not a vague sense of calm or a placebo response. It is a measurable hormonal change that shows up in blood and saliva samples. For sleep, the research is similarly encouraging. Multiple studies have shown that lavender aromatherapy improves sleep quality and reduces the time it takes to fall asleep, including in elderly participants and new mothers. Are two groups where disrupted sleep is particularly common and where reaching straight for pharmaceutical sleep aids carries risks. Those old sachets in the bedroom drawer were doing something. Now we know precisely what. Number 7. Chamomile. The bedtime cup that is working through a mechanism most people would never guess. Across Britain, chamomile tea is the drink people reach for when they want something soothing before bed. It sits in the back of the tea cupboard, usually behind the regular tea bags and the peppermint. Most people assume it is pleasant but mild, a calming ritual rather than real medicine. The chemistry suggests otherwise. Chamomile from the plant Matricaria chamomilla contains a compound called apigenin. Apigenin binds to receptor sites in the brain that are also targeted by benzodiazepine drugs, the class of medication that includes diazepam, a drug many older Britons will remember their GP discussing with them at various points. The effect of chamomile is considerably gentler. But the underlying mechanism is real and documented in the scientific literature. It is not a placebo. There is a genuine pharmacological reason it produces a calming effect. Clinical trials have confirmed this. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology found that chamomile extract produced significant reductions in anxiety symptoms compared to placebo in participants with generalized anxiety disorder. Further research found that longer-term use reduced the rate of anxiety returning after an initial period of improvement. For sleep, studies have shown meaningful improvements, particularly in elderly volunteers and new mothers. Two groups, incidentally, for whom reaching for pharmaceutical sleep aids carries particular concerns. The cup of chamomile before bed is not merely a habit with a pleasant smell attached. It is a gentle but documented pharmacological intervention, and it has been one for the best part of 2,000 years. Number 6. Peppermint, the herb in your toothpaste and chewing gum that matched paracetamol in a clinical trial. This is the one that tends to surprise people most when it first comes up. Peppermint is so thoroughly associated with chewing gum, toothpaste, and the little mints in the dish by the restaurant, till that the idea of it appearing in serious clinical research seems almost comic. But the research is there, and it is worth understanding. For tension headaches, multiple clinical trials have found that peppermint oil applied to the forehead and temples produces pain relief that is statistically comparable to paracetamol. One study published in the journal Cephalalgia in the 1990s measured this directly. The active compound, menthol, activates specific receptors in the skin that produce genuine analgesic effects. And not simply a cooling sensation, actual measurable pain relief in controlled trial conditions. For irritable bowel syndrome, the evidence is even stronger. Enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules are now acknowledged in multiple gastroenterology guidelines as an effective treatment for IBS symptoms. Meta-analyses pooling the results of multiple trials have confirmed that menthol relaxes smooth muscle in the digestive tract, reducing the cramping and spasms that make IBS so disruptive to daily life. Several clinical guidelines now recommend it as a first-line option. For congestion and blocked airways, menthol is a well-studied decongestant that works by stimulating cold receptors in the nasal passages and improving the sensation of airflow. It is why menthol-based products for colds have been standard in British homes for generations. Because they work. 3 separate medical applications, all in a plant that costs less than £1 at the supermarket and grows happily on a kitchen windowsill. Before we continue, if you find this kind of research useful, and we suspect many of you do, please do hit subscribe. Every week we go through topics like this, where proper science meets the kind of practical knowledge that your parents and grandparents would have taken as read. You will not want to miss what is coming next. Now, on to number 5. Number 5, Echinacea, the garden flower with hundreds of clinical studies and a trick that tells you immediately whether yours is any good. You may know it as the purple coneflower. It grows in gardens across Britain for its appearance alone, tall stems, dramatic petals that droop slightly around a central cone, flowering well into autumn. Most people who grow it treat it purely as an ornamental plant. Most of them have no idea it is one of the most extensively studied medicinal plants in the world. Echinacea was used for centuries by indigenous communities in North America as a primary medicine for infection, fever, and immune stress. It made its way into British and European herbal practice in the 19th century before being largely set aside as mainstream medicine, placed its faith entirely in synthetic drugs. What the subsequent research has found is worth knowing. Hundreds of published clinical studies have examined echinacea preparations, and the better quality meta-analyses, pooling results across multiple randomized trials, have confirmed two things. First, that taking echinacea preparations reduces the likelihood of developing an upper respiratory tract infection. Second, that when infections do occur, the duration and severity are reduced in people who have taken it. The active compounds include a group called alkylamides, which interact directly with immune cells. A good quality echinacea preparation will produce a distinct tingling, almost numbing sensation on the tongue within moments of taking it. That sensation is caused by the alkylamides. If you take a product and feel nothing whatsoever, and the preparation is likely of poor quality or has degraded, that is a genuinely useful thing to know before you spend your money. Timing is also important. The evidence suggests it is most effective when taken at the very first hint of illness. That morning when you wake up feeling slightly flat or notice the beginnings of a sore throat. Taken early and maintained, it shortens recovery for most people who use it. With NHS waiting rooms stretched and high street pharmacy costs rising, a good quality echinacea tincture is something that belongs back in the British medicine. Number 4. Elderberry. The hedgerow berry that was once a British winter staple and has clinical evidence to justify bringing it back. There was a time, not so very long ago in the span of things, when a jar of elderberry syrup in the kitchen cupboard through the winter months was as ordinary as having a tin of elastoplast in the bathroom cabinet. The elder tree grows freely across Britain. Its dark purple berries were made into preparations at home, used at the first sign of a cold or flu, and passed down through families as a matter of course. Then it went the way of a great deal of traditional knowledge, quietly retired as the pharmaceutical age arrived and decided it knew better. The clinical evidence for elderberry, however, was not retired with it. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of International Medical Research in 2004 examined flu patients who received either elderberry extract or placebo. Those taking elderberry recovered significantly more quickly, with the difference in illness duration measuring several days. A subsequent meta-analysis, pooling results across multiple trials, confirmed meaningful reductions in both the duration and severity of influenza symptoms. The berries are rich in anthocyanins, deeply pigmented compounds with antiviral properties that appear to interfere with the ability of the influenza virus to replicate, while simultaneously supporting the immune system's own response. That two-pronged action is likely why the effect on duration is as pronounced as the trials suggest. Making elderberry preparation at home is straightforward. Dried elderberries, available from health food shops and online, can be simmered with water and natural honey, perhaps with fresh ginger or a stick of cinnamon, into a preparation that tastes far more pleasant than anything with the word medicine attached to it. A small daily amount through winter as maintenance and larger amounts at the earliest sign of illness is the traditional approach now supported by clinical research. Nobody ever patented the hedgerow, which may be precisely why it fell out of favor. But it has been doing its job all along. Number 3. Ginger. The root that has been used as medicine on every inhabited continent for 5,000 years and that consistently outperforms pharmaceutical alternatives in clinical trials. 5,000 years of medicinal use is not a number used casually here. Ginger appears in ancient Chinese medical texts. It features extensively in Ayurvedic tradition. Greek and Arab physicians documented it. It is part of medieval European herbalism, Persian medicine, and the healing practices of dozens of separate cultures that developed without contact with one another. It is one of the most consistently and universally used medicinal plants in all of recorded human history. Modern pharmacological research has examined why. The root contains compounds called gingerols and shogalls, and their effects have been tested in properly designed controlled trials. For nausea, the results are genuinely striking. Multiple randomized controlled trials have found that ginger is as effective as pharmaceutical anti-nausea medications for chemotherapy-induced nausea, for post-surgical nausea, and for pregnancy-related morning sickness. In several trials, it performed comparably to the pharmaceutical option, but with a considerably lower burden of side effects. For anyone who has been through chemotherapy or supported someone who has and knows how debilitating that nausea can be, this is not a trivial finding. For pain and inflammation, research has demonstrated significant improvements in osteoarthritis pain following ginger supplementation, named the anti-inflammatory compounds in the root work through some of the same molecular pathways as common non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which explains why the pain-reducing effect appears consistently in clinical study results. For digestion, ginger accelerates gastric emptying, meaning it helps food move through the stomach more efficiently. That is the physical mechanism behind every traditional use for indigestion and nausea going back millennia. Fresh ginger tea is nothing more complicated than a few thin slices of fresh root simmered in water for 10 minutes. It is in every supermarket in Britain. It costs very little. And what it does for nausea in particular is documented comprehensively enough to appear in clinical guide. Number 2, turmeric. The golden root that pharmaceutical companies are investing serious resources trying to replicate, and why that matters. Turmeric is the vivid yellow-orange spice that gives curry its color and that has made its way onto the shelves of health food shops and most major supermarkets across Britain over the past decade, usually in supplement form alongside various claims that people are understandably uncertain about. The research behind it, however, is more solid than the marketing might suggest. Turmeric has been central to Indian and Chinese medicine for thousands of years. The primary active compound is called curcumin, and curcumin has demonstrated potent anti-inflammatory effects in both laboratory research and clinical trials. The reason pharmaceutical companies are investing in developing synthetic versions of it is straightforward. Chronic, low-grade inflammation is now understood to be a significant underlying driver of many of the most serious diseases of later life, including cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cognitive decline, and arthritis. A compound that can reliably and safely reduce chronic inflammation is, from a commercial perspective, extremely valuable. Clinical trials have shown curcumin producing reductions in arthritis pain and stiffness comparable to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Studies have shown measurable improvements in markers of cardiovascular health. Research into curcumin and cognitive protection is ongoing, and the preliminary findings are serious enough that major research institutions continue to invest in it. Which brings us to number one. Number one, garlic, the most clinically studied medicinal plant on Earth, and you almost certainly bought some with your last weekly shop. Let us be straightforward about how garlic is treated in most British households. It goes into pasta sauce, it disappears into the base of a stew, it is bought without much thought, and used without a moment's consideration that it might be doing something quite extraordinary to whoever eats it. The medicinal use of garlic spans virtually every culture and every period of recorded history. Ancient Egyptian texts document it. Greek athletes consumed it before competition. Roman soldiers were issued it. It appears in Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic practice, medieval European herbalism, and the folk traditions of dozens of cultures that had no contact with one another. Then every single one independently arrived at the same plant for overlapping reasons. That kind of convergence across unrelated traditions separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years is worth pausing on. The active compound responsible for most of garlic's medicinal effects is allicin, produced when a clove is cut or crushed and an enzymatic reaction is triggered within the flesh. Allicin and its breakdown compounds have been extensively studied for their antimicrobial properties, and the findings are significant. Research has demonstrated activity against a broad range of bacteria, viruses, and fungi in laboratory conditions, including, importantly, some strains that pose serious challenges in our NHS hospitals. Studies have found antimicrobial activity from garlic compounds against MRSA, the antibiotic-resistant bacteria that has been a persistent and serious concern for hospital infection control. It would be inaccurate to suggest this means garlic treats MRSA infections in clinical patients in the way that antibiotics attempt to. The research is primarily laboratory-based, and the clinical application is far more complex. But the scientific interest is genuine and ongoing. For cardiovascular health, the evidence is robust and consistent. Meta-analyses combining results from multiple controlled trials have confirmed that garlic supplementation produces meaningful reductions in blood pressure in people with hypertension. Further studies have shown reductions in LDL cholesterol and improvements in the elasticity and function of blood vessel walls. For the many people across Britain managing their blood pressure and cardiovascular health in later life, these are not trivial findings. For immune function and infection prevention, a well-designed randomized controlled trial found that people taking a standardized garlic supplement through the winter months experienced significantly fewer colds than those on placebo. And when they did become ill, they recovered more quickly. The research on garlic and cancer risk is based on population studies rather than clinical trials, which limits how strongly it can be stated. But studies consistently observe associations between high garlic consumption and lower rates of certain gastrointestinal cancers across multiple large populations. The pattern is consistent enough across different countries and different datasets that cancer researchers continue to examine it seriously. For practical use, crushing or finely chopping garlic and allowing it to rest for around 10 minutes before cooking preserves more of the active compounds by giving the enzymatic reaction time to complete before heat disrupts it. Raw garlic delivers the highest allicin content. Aged garlic extract, the form most commonly used in cardiovascular research, is widely available in Britain from health food shops and reputable online suppliers. The plant that has been sitting in kitchens since before recorded history, used as medicine on every inhabited continent before modern science existed, has now accumulated one of the most remarkable evidence bases of any natural compound, plant or synthetic. Yeah, not because someone funded a marketing campaign, not because anyone holds a patent on it, because the chemistry is real and the trials keep confirming it. What is perhaps most striking about everything we have covered today is not any single plant on this list. It is the pattern that emerges when you look at them together. Plant after plant that ordinary people in Britain have been growing in their gardens, buying at the market, and using in their cooking and their kitchens for generations, turns out, when examined properly under clinical conditions, to do something measurable and genuine. The knowledge was never wrong. It just stopped being explained in a language that the modern world trusted. Some of what we covered today can be used straight from the kitchen or the garden with very little effort. Some is better taken in a more concentrated form from a reputable supplier, but very little of it requires a long journey, an expensive consultation, or a product you have never encountered before. Most of it is, in every practical sense, already in front of you. If you found this useful, and we hope you did, please give it a like. It genuinely helps other people find content like this who might benefit from hearing it. And we would love to know which of these surprised you most. Was it the clinical trial that compared peppermint oil directly to paracetamol? Was it the licensed lavender preparation? Was it what the research says about garlic and resistant bacteria? Leave your answer in the comments below. We read every single one. If you are not yet subscribed, now is a good time to do it. We put out a new video every week on topics exactly like this one, where real clinical research meets the kind of practical, everyday knowledge that your parents and grandparents would have recognized immediately. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what is coming next. The knowledge has always been here. It just needed someone to put it back into plain English.